This is an ad from BetterHelp Online Therapy. We always hear about the red flags to avoid in relationships, but it's just as important to focus on the green flags. If you're not quite sure what they look like, therapy can help you identify those qualities so you can embody the green flag energy and find it in others. BetterHelp offers therapy 100% online, and sign-up only takes a few minutes. Visit BetterHelp.com today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com.
Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, it is still cold outside, still somehow sporadically snowing, but baseball is back with some upgrades to PNC Park and some of our other big arenas. Plus, there's drama at the Novo Asian Food Hall. We're rounding up the biggest stories of the week. It's Friday, February 21st. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh is talking about. I'm with CityCast Sophia Lowe.
Hey, Megan.
And we're with one of our favorite local freelancers and CityCast Pittsburgh contributor, Meg St. Esprit. Hey, yeah.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Good.
We're doing good. Cold, bundled up.
Yeah, I know. My oldest is in Florida right now, and I am jealous.
Oh, well, it's not. We're not going to make it better with today's show. We're talking about the cold, but we're going to start with a trivia question. Meg, I think this is the first time you've been with us since we've been doing this, so buckle in.
I'm excited. I love trivia.
Excellent. No pressure, though. It is a big moment for vaccine news this week. Robert Kennedy Jr. was just confirmed as the U.S. Secretary of Health. A lot of us have been following some of the confirmation hearings. Kennedy, of course, has a history of spreading bad information about vaccine safety. Mm-hmm. He took a lot of questions about that. He said a lot of weird things during these confirmation hearings. But he at least promised that he wouldn't prevent people from getting the polio vaccine. I love how we're just like hanging on to any thread we can right now.
It's a small one.
Right? Like the bar is low.
But as it happens, polio, the vaccine, is celebrating its own milestone this week. So that vaccine, if you didn't know, was developed here in Pittsburgh by a fella named Dr. Jonas Salk. And this week marks 71 years since, according to Pitt, because that's where he worked, they held their first mass inoculation event. It was at an elementary school over in Lawrenceville. But the question is actually not about polio. Before Dr. Salk pioneered the polio vaccine, truly changed the world, he created another vaccine to help prevent a very common disease. What was it? This was back in the 1940s.
Like a common disease in the 1940s or today?
It is still very common today, but there's a vaccine for it, thanks in part to Dr. Salk.
That is a good clue. I don't know, though. I guess I'll just go with flu, the other very common disease right now.
I'm not giving any multiple choices this time. Meg, what do you think?
I'm leaning towards flu, too. I just read a really interesting book about the 1918 flu.
Yeah, the Spanish influenza, our other pandemic.
Yeah, and how they were kind of experimenting with inoculation in various ways. So I'm thinking that, too. But I'm really unsure. I'm familiar with the polio story. There's that gorgeous mural at Children's Hospital, that explains kind of the history of it that I've read many times while waiting for appointments. But yeah, this, I don't know.
We did a pod about it actually back in the day, kind of walking through like how Dr. Salk did this. And we got to talk to his son, who was actually one of the first people to ever be inoculated. Dr. Salk gave it to his own children, his boys. The modern Dr. Salk, Peter Salk, he actually still works at Pitt, just like his dad. And there's a really cool exhibit with a bunch of his like scientific artifacts over there. We'll link the podcast in our show notes. And there's more information in there about like how to go check it out at Pitt. It's free. You just have to go during business hours. It's super cool.
And we will also put a link in the show notes to the trivia quiz so you can figure out the answer and find out what other vaccine Dr. Salk worked on.
Truly, you don't get the answers here. You have to roll over to the website. So we'll get into the news. It has been another frigid week. Sophia, you did the most and called the National Weather Service. What's the latest on Pittsburgh snowfall?
Yeah, so the snowfall this season has been 27.9 inches, and the season started in November. That was like when the first snowfall was.
Yeah.
I feel like there has been a lot of snow in Pittsburgh this season, at least since I've moved here. It's definitely been the most snow, but it's still slightly below average. Like the average snowfall in Pittsburgh historically has been 31.9 inches.
Wow, I really would have thought like this year was like way more than average.
So we had Mary Hours from KDK at our school in the fall, and she was telling the kids that this was going to be a winter with more snow due to the El Nino, La Nina stuff. But I was just talking with some friends this week, and we were saying this winter feels like we've had more consistent snow. Like we haven't had these major dumpings, but we have had snow cover on the ground for a lot of days. And I think
maybe
that's
it. It's just like it feels like it's more because it never went away for like the long stretch there.
I guess also historically, if we're looking back like 50, 60 years, I wouldn't be surprised we had more snow back then than now. In terms of like how cold it's been, at least in the month of February, the average has been 32 degrees, and that's pretty normal for February.
Yeah, the temperature doesn't feel that off to me. But I do think maybe one thing that has like triggered folks around all of this is that with all the snow and the cold and the rain and the ice, apparently around a third of the city's snowplows have been just missing in action. Have y'all seen these stories?
No.
Like WPXI investigates not enough snowplows.
Rick Earl has been on it. My favorite part of this is how like no one reporting on this seems to know exactly how many snowplows the city has. I don't think the city knows, actually. It's not the reporter's fault. The reporters are repeating what the city's saying.
Just like parked in random lots everywhere.
The city told the Trib on Tuesday that we had 68 snowplows, but that only 50 of them were out like treating streets. They did not say where the other 18 were, just that they were part of a, quote, reserve fleet. But Public Works said that we actually have 75. Then WPXI investigates. They come in and they said we have 104.
That's a big difference.
I know, but that 36 of them are broken. So still, even no matter how you slice it, it's like at least a third are completely offline.
That's wild.
I wonder, are they differentiating between like the giant legit snowplow trucks and then like the pickup trucks with a plow on the front? Like maybe there's some semantics at play. I don't know.
Totally possible.
It's a mystery.
For what it's worth, the city does have a snowplow tracker, but it only shows them in real time, like as they're working. So if they're not out and active, or if they're under a certain speed limit, you can't actually see them. Also, there's like no FAQ page that like tells you how many we have, what they do. Like it's like all what to expect as a customer, not like, hey, I want to know how snowplows work.
I've heard anecdotally from people, like a lot of people complaining on Reddit specifically about how like their street hasn't been plowed, or just sending out warnings, it's slippy out there. And I'm like, yeah, it's been slippy for like a month.
Yeah.
Our principal was standing out front this morning telling kids it was slippy.
A shred, a sprinkle, a heap, I don't know, of good news to all of this. Every one of these stories that I've seen all have the anecdote that apparently we have a ton of salt, like literally many tons of salt ready to go. We just don't necessarily have all the trucks out spreading it.
That doesn't seem like that good news then. What's the point of having all the salt if we can't get it out?
The one thing I'm thinking about with all of this, though, is with all of this snow and rain in the winter and early spring, then we get something else that's a Pittsburgh special in April, May, and June. Landslides.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, thinking about rain and precipitation, National Weather Service here in Pittsburgh also had a number for that. So far, we've gotten 7.5 inches, which is pretty on the nose for the average at this time.
That's surprising. I feel like we've had a really wet winter, but
it's not snow melting.
I know. But to your point, Meg, I mean, a couple of lawmakers here have talked about like why we need landslide insurance. If this is not something you've ever had to worry about, if your home is not on a hill, or if you just like don't think about it, you should. Because if landslides happen here in Pittsburgh, and they always do, and we have really, really wet seasons, there's nothing you can really do about it. Like your homeowner policy, your average one, will not cover this. They won't remediate it. The cities can't afford to. Municipalities, like sometimes they can't even afford to clear like their own roads when we get landslides. They have to get like federal help and stuff. And then of course FEMA, they don't have a landslide program. Oddly, it does have a mudslide program, which is not helpful.
Wait, is that different?
Legally, I guess there's a distinction between mud and land. But yeah, anyway.
I'm sorry. Okay.
But, FEMA, of course, has its own issues right now with threats to federal cuts.
Yeah. I had a friend that lost their home in the East End to a landslide several years ago, and the fallout from it affected their family for years because, as you said, there was no financial recourse. They just had to start over. It was really devastating. So this new legislation seems really encouraging.
Yeah. And then, you can't sell the property. Like,
Right.
Nobody wants to buy that. You can't really get in there to clean it up a lot of times. WESA actually had a great story that talked to a homeowner that's said, yeah, I go visit my old house a couple weeks. It's been years now. Nothing's happened. Nothing's
That's
changed.
really sad.
It's weird that I can't re-inhabit my home, but I can't. So I just check on it from time to time.
Wow.
The couple of lawmakers, it's Valerie Gatos in Moon and Emily Kincaid in Pittsburgh. They have proposed this before and it did not go anywhere. So they've tweaked it a little bit for this session. They've added sinkholes to their list of potential coverages.
Another Pittsburgh problem.
Seems important. Yeah.
Yeah, another calamity that we are susceptible to. WESA also shared something that I had not seen before, actually, a county dashboard online that shows where past landslides have occurred, plus other areas around there that's susceptible to them. I will put it in the show notes, but a note of caution. I check this with a little bit of hesitation because I don't necessarily know if I want to know if I'm in danger, and there's nothing I can do about it. It makes me nervous.
Well, I feel like this could be useful if you were thinking about buying a home
Right.
or moving somewhere and you want to know the area you're heading to is safe, especially because scientists are saying that rainfall and things like flooding and landslides are all going to increase because of climate change. So if you're, thinking ahead for the future, that might be a resource to check out.
One plus of Pittsburgh, while we're talking about climate and real estate risk, is when I was researching something for my column at Pittsburgh Magazine, we are one of the cities with the lowest climate risks. We don't have hurricanes and wildfires, but we do have these things that are kind of unique to this area that, as you said, where you're buying a house really matters. We're on a pretty flat level lot, but some of our neighbors' houses are clinging to a cliff.
Yeah, it's so variable in Pittsburgh. You can have a nice flat lawn and then across the street, it just is a sheer cliff face and you never know where you're going to be until you drive around the neighborhood.
Ready to conquer your next big challenge? Make 2025 your medal year by signing up for the Dick's Sporting Goods Pittsburgh Marathon weekend of events. Happening May 3rd and 4th in Pittsburgh, it's more than a marathon. Choose from a marathon, relay, 5K, and more. And if you prefer walking, join the popular half-marathon walking division. The Pittsburgh Marathon isn't just about running. It's about community, celebration, and pushing yourself to new limits. Over 300,000 fans will be cheering you on through the streets of the Steel City. And the hardest step is the first one, signing up. A registration today is a commitment to your future self. Join the excitement by visiting thepittsburghmarathon.com. Use CityCast15 to save 15% off any event registration. That's thepittsburghmarathon.com. And again, use that code, CityCast15, for 15% off any event.
Today's show is sponsored by the Frick Pittsburgh Museum and Gardens and their newest, still upcoming exhibition. Mark your calendars for artist Kara Walker and her Harper's Pictorial History of the Civil War annotated. If you don't know Walker's work yet, this is a perfect time to acquaint yourself. Her contemporary artworks are on display all over the United States, literally San Francisco to New York, and soon right here in our own backyard. She has won a MacArthur Genius Grant. The Washington Post even called her this generation's Andy Warhol. She really brings the hype. Now, I have only seen pictures of this exhibition, so I'm going to be just like most of y'all, checking this out for the very first time. But we should look forward to big artworks. Walker's bringing 15 large-scale prints where she uses these striking black silhouettes over old Harper's Weekly engravings to depict the racist and violent reality that often gets glossed over in traditional historic narratives. Walker uses silhouettes in so much of her work. She says they really say a lot with very little information, just like a stereotype. The exhibition, Kara Walker, Harper's Pictorial History of the Civil War Annotated, opens soon at the Frick on March 1st. Get tickets and learn more at thefrickpittsburgh.org.
Next up, some drama at the Novo Asian Food Hall in the Strip. Before I explain what's happening there, have either of you been? Like, it's still pretty new. I think less than a year old, around a year old.
Yeah, over there in the terminal building, the owners, McCaffrey. I have strolled through. It is beautiful, but I was overwhelmed by options and actually did not end up ordering anything. I feel like I just got overstimulated and sat down and then left.
Oh, no.
Wait, is that the morning you and I were down there? No.
Yes, actually, it was.
Okay.
It was totally that morning.
So, yeah, we didn't eat there that time, but I did go back with my best friend and one of our other friends. It was really good. We wanted to go to it because we saw it on Anna Eats Pittsburgh, and it just was right up our alley. We loved it, but I'm curious about this drama.
Yeah, I also love the food there. One thing I recommend is this Superfruit XLT from the boba place. It comes in a small bucket.
What?
And it's only 50 cents more than a normal cup.
Is it actually bigger than your head? Because right now your hands are larger than your head.
I actually saved the bucket, so after we're done recording, I'll bring it to show you. But I would say about the size of my head.
So, could you put 4 straws in it and have, if you had 4 kids, hypothetically, have them share it?
Yes. Mm-hmm,
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I take them all to boba at Ross Park Mall, it's like a second mortgage. Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like they need this bucket.
Yeah.
But the actual news is that it seems like there's a lot of infighting happening there between the different owners. So, since it's a food hall, there's a few different vendors, different restaurants in the stalls. And some of the owners of the food stalls are unhappy with Alex Tang. He is the founder of this whole project. And, this is a legal battle, but the big picture is that these unhappy vendors have alleged in court filings that Tang is cutting folks out of decision making. He's not sharing profits, and he's misleading them when it comes to their leases in that space.
Sounds really messy.
I feel like Tang's name is the one that I was most familiar with in all of this because he's the owner of Mola over in East Liberty. And he also, I think, going back a ways, he had a lot to do with getting Jimmy Wan's here in the Pittsburgh and Cranberry areas too.
Mm-hmm. We love Jimmy Wan's. Yeah, good food, but this is interesting drama.
And Alex Tang, he also is one of the owners of Mola too. So that's one of the food stalls in Novo.
Yeah. All credit to the Post-Gazette on this. They've reported on the court filings. It looks like no one's actually talked about this. It's all kind of getting pieced together through court documents.
Yeah, at least as of recording this. But I imagine if there's a legal battle, people sometimes are a little more quiet.
Although sometimes people are popping off on social media, so we will stay tuned.
Check Pittsburgh Reddit.
The general complaint seems to be that Tang is quote unquote intentionally distressing some of these other businesses. One of them said that so that he could possibly take over their footprints in the food hall. That's again quoting the court document. It is really messy.
Yeah, so that kind of raised the question for me, should we eat there? Are we supporting something ethically that we shouldn't? But it seems to me that if we stopped going there, it would also hurt the people on both sides of this legal battle. And we don't really know yet how it's going to shake out.
Yeah, I'm with you on this, Meg. Just to give a little more context, a couple of the co-owners of Mola are the plaintiffs. So they are suing Tang. So it seems like there's even this kind of infighting between who's involved at Mola too. So, if this stuff is true, I am a little sad about it, but it seems like high level business owner disagreements. I do hope that everyone at the end of this feels like they got what they want. They get what they were promised as, joining this food hall. But I want our small businesses to thrive. I'll still keep going. There hasn't been a call to stop going and supporting these businesses.
That's right. True. I think that would be different if any of these individual restaurants that, are involved or not involved, were to speak up and be hey, don't support so-and-so. That would be a different question. And so far, there's none of that. It's just they've taken it to court. I don't know. I mean, maybe I feel maybe I'm being a Pollyanna, but taking the step to go to court, maybe that results in some mediation and everybody gets in the room and they talk about it and then everybody's fine. Because so often I feel so often it's communication, right? People are feeling they're not being heard or being respected, and maybe just the act of taking it to court will help resolve some of these problems.
I hope so. And for now, we can still get buckets of boba until we hear further.
Absolutely. And I think Kung Fu Chicken has the best fried chicken I've had in the city.
Whoa,
oh, really?
That is a strong statement, Sophia.
Have you been to Hook Fish and Chicken?
No, I haven't, but this is like very thinly fried. It's not as greasy. It's like that Asian style that I really love.
Okay.
I'm sure there's plenty of other really fantastic fried chicken. This has just been my personal favorite.
All right, I'll try it next time I go.
What sort of promises have you made to yourself this year? Maybe get in better shape or eat healthier, save more money, travel somewhere new. What about discovering a new culture by learning a new language? With Babbel, you can do that in just a few weeks. I'm CityCast CEO David Plotz, and I'm having such a good time learning Spanish on Babbel this year. I'm taking a trip to Mexico City in the spring, and Babbel is giving me the Spanish foundation that's going to make my trip so much better. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by more than 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks or at whatever pace you choose. And because conversing is the key to really understanding each other in a new language, Babbel is designed using practical, real-world conversations. And one way they do that is with their own podcasts. I'm a podcast listener. I'm guessing since you're listening to this podcast, you are too. And I have been getting ready for my Mexico City trip by listening to Babbel's conversational podcasts. There's a short conversation you listen to, then an instructor talks you through what happened, and then you listen again, and then you catch everything when you listen that second time. There's also a great read-along transcript, too, which I love. The one I did today was with Maria and Carmela trying to make dinner plans, but Carmela is so busy. She's way too busy with work and yoga, but finally they agreed on brunch on Saturday. Studies from Yale, Michigan State, and other universities continue to prove that Babbel works. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. So let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting CityCast listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Babbel.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Are you still quoting 30-year-old movies? Have you said cool beans in the past 90 days? Do you think Discover isn't widely accepted? If this sounds like you, you're stuck in the past. Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. And every time you make a purchase with your card, you automatically earn cash back. Welcome to the now. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/creditcard, based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
Well, while we're talking about all of this big news, another update. Our long national nightmare is over. If you are a sports fan in Pittsburgh, there was a big announcement. Heinz Field is getting its Wi-Fi fixed, and so is PPG Paints. I think this is hilarious. It's like an update to the city.
That's actually really important because if I'm going to a game, I have probably been dragged there and I will want to be on my phone doing other stuff for at least part of it.
I mean, if 20,000 people are on their phone at the same time, like it always drags down the network. So this is legitimately a thing I'm glad they are fixing. It's just really funny to like hear people talk about it, you know?
Side note, I also love how you said Heinz Field without even pausing or noticing.
Oh, heck no. I mean, it's Acrisure Stadium. Fine. They said the Wi-Fi was like last fixed at Acrisure back in 2016, which makes it ancient by modern standards. It's going to cost $7 million to fix Wi-Fi.
What?
And then over at PPG, they have a different system, totally like different facility. But that's $2.3 million to fix the Wi-Fi at PPG.
Both of those feel like absurdly high numbers to me, but what do I know about the internet?
Honestly.
They did. But I will say PPG in particular, you know, they use digital tickets and I've had trouble loading them there because...
Same. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So I think that's a much needed improvement. The digital tickets are great. I am not a paper person, but we need to be able to pull them up on our phone.
Yeah, I had to step over into a corner and like pull them up and then like go get back in line. It was like a whole thing.
Yep.
Yeah, all of these improvements, these upgrades, they're actually for all three major sports stadiums. So $10 million total. That gets approved by the Sports and Exhibition Authority, which owns all of those arenas. I feel like sometimes folks don't know that. We have like an agency adverti that does it. They also own the convention center, the riverfront park over there in the North Shore, and I think at least 3 parking garages on the North Shore.
You gotta own a parking garage to make it big in Pittsburgh.
Honestly, it's hard to keep track because the SEA, the Sports and Exhibition Authority, I swear their website looks like it was designed for Netscape. I don't think anyone's updated it like in at least 15, 20 years. Like literally, I don't think anyone's updated it in like 5 years because if you look at the bottom, it says copyright 2019.
Well, maybe they can use that $10 million, like siphon a little extra to upgrade their website. But other upgrades that are coming, there's going to be better ADA seating at PNC Park, for example. They are putting carpet in the visiting team's clubhouse. So I guess we're being nice and making things great for other people. There is going to be better traffic calming around Heinz Acrisure, whatever you want to call it. They're going to put up these like metal barrier things where the planters are right now.
Yeah, but I think they're going to be removable too, so that like when they have special events, you still have like options.
Oh, that's smart. Okay. That makes sense.
And when I saw this on KDK, they called them bollards, which I had to Google. So yeah, it does. It's interesting. Like they can move it and change the traffic flow. So I think that'll be helpful.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all supposed to be a good sign for tourism, but Meg, I'm going to lean on you for this one because like Visit Pittsburgh keeps telling us that the comeback is complete here because last year we were apparently just shy of our pre-pandemic tourism levels from like 2019. That was worth like $6.5 billion to the city, but I always find it really nebulous when people talk about like economic impact to tourism. But they say that, you know, that's a great sign because this year, 2025, is going to be even better because we're having the U.S. Open, the tennis tournament over in Oakmont this summer, and that, you know, our tourist offerings are going to be more competitive. Although, again, Meg, they brought up that we wanted to be competitive with Louisville and with Kansas City. And I just, when I read those cities, I was like, wait, is that the barometer? Are those the high water marks?
So here's what I'll say. The bulk of my travel coverage is similar second-tier cities within about a 6-hour drive of Pittsburgh. I haven't been to Louisville or Kansas City in a long time, although they're both actually on our list coming up.
I love Louisville, but I still have questions.
I can't wait. One of my best friends lives there. Yeah, one of my best friends lives there. I can't wait to go see it as an adult. But yeah, so visiting, you know, smaller cities for a weekend trip is kind of a competitive market. So the ones that I have personally done and been hosted by their destination marketing organization, the equivalent of Visit Pittsburgh. We've recently done Columbus, Cleveland, Buffalo, Grand Rapids. And I do feel like those are comparable cities to Pittsburgh if you're thinking about a weekend road trip.
And all of those make sense. They're kind of like in that Rust Belt, like, you know, right. Midwest kind of like swing.
This Rust Belt revival, yeah. And I will say, I'm glad to see our tourism coming back by the numbers. I don't feel like I quite hear it coming back yet in the chatter in the travel community. Some of the things I think those cities have done better, especially Cleveland and Buffalo, is revamping their waterfront post-industrialization. We're getting there, but we just are not there yet. I mean, that Buffalo waterfront revitalization, which was, I believe, sponsored in part by the owner of the Sabres, is just really incredible. And so I think some of the development that's being proposed along the North Shore and the North Side is going to help with that. But I think perception-wise, we're not quite there yet. I think the draft is going to help, the NFL draft next year.
Well, and yeah, next year in 2026. Well, I want to know, like, about Buffalo, though. Like, what makes it nicer? Like, because I think of our riverfront, I guess I'm also thinking about it in terms of like context, right? Like where we've been. But like we have like Point State Park and we have like some of these trails that are really gorgeous. Now, granted, they're not all connected yet. But yeah, like what does Buffalo have that's like maybe nicer or better?
So we just went to Buffalo this summer, Buffalo and Niagara for 5 days. They are very similar. I will say Buffalo's infrastructure along the river feels a little more family friendly and approachable. There's a lot of like walk-up eateries, quick-serve restaurants. They have, you know, we have the one submarine. They have, I want to say 4 naval ships that you can tour. It took a really long time, let me tell you. Like, my kids and I were on these ships for hours. There's
you also have a child that really, really loves that stuff.
I do. I have a military buff, my oldest, for sure. And it was very interesting. But they have a lot of waterfront eateries, which we do as well. You know, the Foundry is one of our favorite. But they also have these places where you can sit down and grab fries with your kids and then hop on the carousel. And I feel like it's just a little more centralized, a little more approachable, where ours feels like a lot of sit-down restaurants along the water. And so I'd like to see kind of a variety of things to do. You know, Columbus has spray parks along the river with swings that you can sit on to watch your kids and things like that.
You don't think that the like grimy brown water steps are like, attracting folks from other cities?
No, because no one wants to get a foot disease when they're on vacation.
I've taken my kids in them. That's part of our inoculation. Swimming in the water steps. Yeah, I just think we're on the right track, but it could use a little bit of sprucing. So I'm excited that we're investing. I think that that's good.
Now that we're talking about our waterfront areas, I am starting to see how we'd want to be competitive with cities, at least like Louisville. I've never been to Kansas City because last summer I was in Louisville for like a festival and a concert, and it was held in this really beautiful outdoor park next to the river. There was enough room for a stage, vendors, a ton of people. Although we have a lot of great venues in Pittsburgh, I don't think we have anything that's outdoors in the same way. Like, sure, we have a stadium, but not like a park where you can kind of spend a day.
Yeah, we have those little bitty parks, but it's not quite comparable in the same way. Fine, I'll give it to you. Actually, speaking of the stadiums, in stories about some of these upgrades that we've proposed, reporters also pointed out that people are now attending the SEA board meetings, which happen every once in a while, to openly complain about the owner of the Pirates, Bob Nutting. I just think it's so funny. Like, apparently there was like an official like thing where someone is like, can you force him to spend more on the team to make them better, or just divest and get rid of the team, like sell it off? I think it's so funny that like that's like now that's how mad fans are, that they're attending board meetings to try to like get stuff done.
So someone told me there's a billboard by the stadium that says Nutting sell the team.
Yeah, that was a campaign. Actually, It's a former Pittsburgh mayoral staffer is one half of the duo behind it. I forget their names. There's actually a good story from Next Generation Newsroom. We'll link in the show notes if you want to know more about the Sell the Team campaign. But yeah, it's really interesting. People are mad.
How much would winning or just, a slightly better Pirate season help Pittsburgh?
I mean, personally, I think we're just all in a better mood, like as a town, when any of the teams are doing well, which like right now, none of them are doing that great. So like, I don't know. It's not even that you care about sports. It's just that like the people in line next to you at the grocery store are happier as humans when somebody's doing well.
Okay, that's fair.
I even think just the vibe at the games, like we went to a Pitt game in the fall, and Pitt obviously is doing very great in the fall. Eli Holstein, amazing. Everything was different about being at one of those games versus being at like a Pirates game where you're like, okay, I'm here for the food and the sunshine, but
I'm here for the vibes. Yeah.
I am there for the free t-shirt.
Yeah. But when we were at Heinz Field and everyone was screaming and cheering for Pitt and it was just awesome. Like, I haven't felt that at PNC Park since I was, probably at Three Rivers Stadium. So.
Yeah, and we should mention too, Pirates kicked off their preseason, their spring training this week. They always do all of that in Florida, so Bradenton is their home base, but the first game is going to be in Sarasota against the Orioles. Sophia, I looked this up for you just because I thought it was fun. You can get a nonstop round-trip flight to Bradenton for $100.
I don't want to go there.
Not that you want to watch the baseball. You just love a quick travel moment for cheap. That's all.
That's fair. That's fair. I don't know what else is in Bradenton. If I was going to Florida, I'd want to go to like Miami or somewhere. But I appreciate the research for me.
I was going to say, I just flew to New York City for $100. So you could also do that.
And something else that's exciting, the new women's professional soccer team, the Pittsburgh Riveters, announced their first ever schedule. This was the team that let Pittsburghers vote on their name. I did not vote because I felt like if I wasn't invested in the sport, I should let, the true sports fans decide.
No, I think randoms should vote. Like, that's the whole point of a public vote.
Yeah.
Okay. So for our next sports team, I'll vote. But the Riveters could have also been the Confluence, the Renegades, or the Strikers.
Yeah, and so their counterpart is the River Hounds. So I think it's fun to put River Hound next to Riveter just because they kind of start in the same way. I don't know. It's kind of fun.
I like the alliteration. Yeah, I forgot to vote. I saw the campaign, and then by the time I went back to it, it was over, which is kind of story of my life, right? I liked the Riveters. That's probably what I would have picked. I feel like it has a nod to like our industrial history, women's history. I love alliteration. So I guess I was on the right side, even though I forgot to be involved.
And their schedule, like we said, came out. The home games are all on Fridays and Sundays to start out. So that's kind of nice if you do want to check a game. The first one is going to be May 16th against the Cleveland Force. They play over there in the South Side, same place as the Riverhounds in Highmark Stadium.
And then a bit of sad sports news. Hockey Hall of Fame broadcaster Mike Lang died this week.
I know.
Yeah, he was 76. He was a Penguins broadcaster for 46 years and was still doing live hits as recently as this season.
Yeah, he had a ton of colorful sayings. So I know the Penguins community is like super bummed right now. Lang was a real personality in town.
It's a loss for sure.
Before we go, what will Yins be thinking about over the weekend? Mine is super short this time. I am excited that Pittsburgh got a new skyscraper. Technically, we have had it for years now because it's been under construction for so long. But it's the First National Bank Tower over there on the lower hill next to PPG Paints, of course. It's officially 26 stories. It's going to be the headquarters to the bank. I still really want to know what fancy restaurant is allegedly going to be in that ground floor there because I kept hearing about something coming and they never made an announcement. So that's what I'm focused on right now.
I know it feels like a tease. I keep checking.
Well, I am thinking about a few things as we head into the weekend. First, Mark Fogel is back in the Pittsburgh area. We talked a lot about this last week, but he's a teacher from Oakmont. He was detained in Russia for more than 3 years, and now he's back in the U.S. and back in Pittsburgh. So I'm sure he and his family are really relieved about that.
Definitely.
And then some of the fun stuff that I'm thinking about. I'm thinking a lot about the aviary. 2 parts to this, but I'll make them quick. First, there was some news last week that the aviary is getting the Shadyside Middle School building as a donation. So the plan is going to turn that into a conservation breeding center for endangered birds. There's also going to be a teaching hospital, education center. This whole thing's a really big project, $17 million, and it's opening in 2027. So not just yet.
I absolutely love this as like a new life for an old school, but particularly like a bougie private school. Like it feels like a perfect second act.
In my head, I'm thinking about the birds flying around like in the school building, like nothing's changed, like a little fantasy novel.
Is this like the owls flying around like Hogwarts? Like that's what you're looking for?
But like really colorful birds. But the aviary news I'm really excited about is that more creatures are coming to the Northside space. KDKA reports that the aviary is getting 7 new species. They're not birds though. The aviary's been making this big deal on Instagram about unveiling the new animals. As of this recording, they've shared pictures of 2 skunks, Buddha and Pepperjack. They look so cute. And these animals are coming from the Natural History Museum's Animal Ambassador program. That ended, but the aviary is taking over. If you want to be spoiled, go to the show notes because the KDKA story gives you that full animal list.
Oh, they're cheating. I am going to follow the aviary on Instagram. I completely forgot they existed. That's great.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see more furry creatures besides the sloth that is very elusive.
Yeah, we're super excited. We're huge fans of the aviary. And I'm really excited that some of these changes also include more like environmental education programs. I'm working on a story right now about this for April for Pittsburgh. And we're talking about places that kids can learn about conservation. And so I already talked to the folks at the Good Zoo at Ogleby and Powder Mill, which is part of the Natural History Museum. So I think this is just one more really great opportunity for people to be able to learn about the environment and conservation efforts locally.
That is really neat. Meg, what about you? What are you going to be thinking about this weekend?
Oh, I'm always thinking about a lot of stuff. But the one thing that stood out this week, I was really excited. My editor at Pittsburgh Magazine, Jessica Sinachak, she found a home that I wrote about this week that is in Bradford Woods. So it was built by Dahl and Ritchie in 1945. Now he built...
I know that name. Why do I know that name?
Because he built like everything. Designed. He's the architect. Three Rivers Stadium, the Civic Arena, the Tower Dorms at Pitt. And so while he was doing all that...
Three Rivers Stadium and the Towers are very different vibes.
I know, right? Yeah. But he was very versatile, I guess. However, in the 40s, when Bradford Woods was like way out in the country and was on the Harmony Short Line trolley route, he built some summer homes there for wealthy Pittsburghers. So this one kind of fell into a little bit of disrepair. It had a little bit of a Swiss chalet makeover done at some point in the 80s. And another prominent architect, he actually built the bicentennial or designed the bicentennial tower in Erie, Mark Edelman. He bought this home in the 90s, rehabbed it, brought it back to life. Now that his kids are grown, it's back on the market and it's ready for a new family. I'm a huge fan of mid-century modern design, and I just loved it. So I don't know if we can drop that in the show notes, but take a look at those pictures.
We absolutely will. And I'm scrolling through these photos now. You know we love a Nebby moment in Pittsburgh real estate.
And he said the deer will just like walk up onto the porch. Like they're just like friendly. It's out in the woods. And it's like 20 minutes from the city. Perfect.
I mean, possibly a selling point for some people, possibly not for the anti-deer contingent here in the city.
True.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. Our music is by Benji. Mallory Falk is the executive producer. Sophia Lowe produces the show. Roving production this week, care of Adrian Gonzalez. Francesca DeBecco writes our Hey Pittsburgh newsletter. And I am your host, Megan Harris. We will be back on Monday with more news from around the city. Have a great weekend, everyone. And I don't know if anybody's going to beat Giant Eagle, like the old ladies at Giant Eagle for me.
Oh, I do love the Giant Eagle fried chicken in a pan. I do.
It's real good.
And their cake icing.